такое.
Но мы не будем очень долго вас здесь развлекать, потому что сегодня у нас замечательная лекция Эндрю Стентона. Я просто в двух словах поприветствую вас в нашем центре, в Digital October. А когда про нас говорят в двух словах, то просто говорят, что это место, где самый интересный контент встречается с самыми интересными людьми. Place where great content meets great people. Вот. Мы надеемся, что вы, те профессионалы из самых разных областей, а мы старались позвать сюда людей и из IT-индустрии, и из индустрии дизайна, архитектуры, кино, анимации и так далее. Вы как раз те самые профессионалы, которые пришли сюда за самым передовым, самым интересным контентом. И на фоне этого контента вы будете делать какие-то прикольные, интересные проекты, и мы будем причастны к этим проектам тоже. Вот. А сегодня у нас в гостях Эндрю Стентон, продюсер, сценарист и художник-аниматор, вице-президент студии Pixar. Вот. Эндрю подарил всем нам потрясающих персонажей типа Вилли, Немо, корпорацию монстров и других. Вот он в Москве, чтобы представить свой новый фильм, который выступил режиссером, фильм «Джон Картер», который в прокате будет с 8 марта. Вот. И мы очень рады его видеть. А прежде чем начать лекцию, хочу передать слово Кате.
Ну, когда к нам обратились друзья из Афиши и предложили организовать лекцию, мы очень порадовались, потому что нам кажется, что учиться рассказывать истории – это самое важное сейчас для людей любых профессий. У нас в Институт медиа, архитектуры и дизайна, мы в основном учим архитекторов, дизайнеров, урбанистов, но также и людей других профессий. Именно со всеми ими мы пытаемся работать таким образом, чтобы они умели интересно и здорово рассказывать истории про город, про людей, про здания, еще про что-то, потому что это тут же делает любой проект совершенно каким-то особенным. Вот, поэтому нам показалось, что это будет полезно абсолютно для широкого такого круга людей. Надеемся, что вам понравится лекция. И Digital October, спасибо за то, что согласились с нами вместе ее организовать.
Мы всегда рады. Andrew, welcome.
Hello. Hi. This is a talk I just gave last week to a conference in Los Angeles called TED, which stands for Technology, Education, and Design. If any of you were there, I apologize that I'm giving this again, but I don't think there are many. And also to warn you, if you don't know me that well, even though I've worked for Pixar for 22 years, I don't know anything about technology. My job is to be a storyteller and to ignore what technology can or can't do. And that invariably pushes the boundaries and gets us wherever we need to go. So, all right, we're going to start with my talk. There's a man backpacking through Scotland, just a tourist, and he stops at a pub to get a drink, and he goes inside the pub, and the only people in there are a bartender and an old man drinking a beer. So the tourist sits down next to him, and he orders a beer, and they sit in silence, drinking. And finally the old man looks at him and goes, "You see this bar? I built this bar with my bare hands. Found the finest wood, gave it more love and care than my own children. But do they call me McGregor the bar builder? No." Takes another drink, points out the window. "You see that stone wall there? I built that stone wall with my bare hands, found each rock and placed it just right through the rain, through the cold. But do they call me McGregor, the stone wall builder? No." Points out the other window. "You see that pier out there? I built that pier on the lake, drove the pilings into the sand, put it down plank by plank. But do they call me McGregor, the pier builder? No. But you fuck one goat." Waiting for the translator to... Storytelling is joke telling. Now we need to be switched over because the screen's not switched over. Is everybody freaking out? Because we need to be on our black screen. We're on a brick wall right now. There we go. All right. Storytelling is joke telling. It's knowing your punchline, your ending, knowing that everything you're saying from the first sentence to the last is contributing to a singular goal and ideally confirming a truth that deepens our understanding of who we are as human beings. We all love stories. We're born for them. Stories affirm who we are. We all want affirmation that our lives have meaning. And nothing does a greater affirmation than when we connect through stories. They can cross through barriers of time, through past, present, future, and they allow us to experience similarities between ourselves and others, real and imagined. There was a children's television show host in America named Mr. Rogers, and he carried a quote in his wallet all the time that said, "There isn't anyone you couldn't love once you'd heard their story." And that got me thinking. I'd like to interpret that into make me care. I consider this the biggest story commandment of all. Please, whether I'm reading something, hearing something, watching something, make me care. We're all painfully aware of not caring. We all know what it's like to sit in front of the TV and just flip channel after channel, nothing on, and then suddenly you stop and there can be a show that's already halfway over and you're drawn in and you start to care. That's not by accident, that's by design. A coworker of mine has this interesting parlor game, or drinking game, depending on who you are, where you say only the ending of your best story and nothing else. And everybody else says theirs, and then whoever has the best ending wins. So it got me thinking, what if I told you my history of story, but I told it from the ending and went back to the beginning? So if I were going to do this, I would end my story, and that's what ultimately led me to speaking to you here today about story. And the most current story lesson I've learned was this year, on the film I just finished called John Carter. It actually comes from a book that was written 100 years ago to this month, called A Princess of Mars. And the author, whose name was Edgar Rice Burroughs, actually put himself in the story as a character. And it starts with him getting a telegram from his rich uncle, John Carter, telling him to come at once to see him. But by the time he gets to the mansion, he finds out his uncle has died and already been entombed in a mausoleum in the back and on his property.
You won't find a keyhole. The thing only opens from the inside. He insisted. No embalming, an open coffin, no funeral. Ah, you don't acquire the kind of wealth your uncle commanded by being like the rest of us, huh? Come, let's go inside.
What that scene's fundamentally doing is making a promise. A good story starts with a promise that it's going to lead somewhere that's worth your time. There's a million ways you can make a promise at the beginning of a story. Sometimes it's as simple as once upon a time. The Carter books always start, there's 11 of them, they always start with Edgar Rice Burroughs telling you something that happened to him. It's like somebody inviting you to a campfire, or a guy in a bar saying, this didn't happen to me, it happened to somebody else, but you've got to hear it. It's a great way to start a story. A well-told promise pulls you back like a pebble in a slingshot and propels you forward through the whole story to the end. In 2008, I pushed all the theories that I knew of story, all my understanding of it at the time, to its limits on this project. probably the purest form of cinematic storytelling. It's the most inclusive approach you can take. I was able to confirm that with this movie. I had this gut feeling a long time, since the whole time I've been working at Pixar, that I think the audience really actually wants to work for their meal. They just don't want to know that they're doing it. And that's your job as a storyteller, is to hide the fact that the audience has actually got to work for their meal. We're born problem solvers. We're compelled to decipher, to deduce, because that's what we do in real life. It's the well-organized absence of information that draws us in. There's a reason we're all compelled to approach a baby or a puppy. It's not just because they're so cute. It's also because they can't fully express themselves. They can't fully tell you what their intentions are. And you cannot stop yourself. It's like a magnet to go to them and go, oh, I think it's hungry. I think it likes me. I think it hates me. That combination is nearly impossible to ignore. Almost against our will, we're compelled to invest ourselves, to actually complete the sentence. And that's working for your meal without knowing it. I first started to really understand this storytelling device when I was writing with Bob Peterson on Finding Nemo. And we called our insight the unifying theory of 2 + 2. Make the audience put it together. Don't give them 4, give them 2 + 2. The failure of engaging your audience. Eisenstein always knew this. Editors and screenwriters have always known this. It's the invisible application that holds our attention in story, but it doesn't just work with picture, it works with dialogue, it works with plot. I don't mean to make this sound like an exact science, because it isn't. That's exactly why we love stories. They're not a widget. You can't produce them in a factory. They aren't exact. Stories should be inevitable, but not predictable. I took a seminar in 2001 with an acting teacher named Judith Weston, and I learned a key insight into character. She believed that all well-drawn characters should have a spine. It's the idea that a character has an inner motor, a dominant unconscious goal that they're striving for, something that can often never be satisfied, and an itch that just can't be scratched. She gave a wonderful example of Al Pacino's character in The Godfather, Michael Corleone. She liked to think that his character, his spine, was to please his father. It was something he could never satisfy. He was still trying to do it even after his father died. I took to this like a duck to water. I really understood that. So Wally's spine is to find the beauty. Marlin, the father in Finding Nemo, his spine is to prevent harm. Woody's is to do what's best for his child. I always try to find the spines that can easily push you positive or negative. It's not always a quality that somebody would be proud of. I'm blessed to be a parent, and selfishly as a writer, I've been lucky to be raising my children at the same time that I was developing as a writer. So witnessing the growth of an actual human being is a huge advantage when your day job is to make up make-believe characters. I believe that we're born with a temperament, that we're wired a certain way, and there is no changing that. All you can do is learn to understand how you're wired up and own it. Some of us are born with temperaments that are more positive, others more negative. Either way, a major threshold is passed in a person's maturity when they acknowledge what drives them and they decide to take the wheel and steer. As parents, you're learning who your kids are, while your kids are learning who they are, and in the process, you're still learning who you are. We're all learning all the time. That's why change is the fundamental element of stories.